This week on the Baseline Podcast, Josh and I discuss the fallout of the Michigan game, what happened with Ohio State and what happened with Michigan. What did they do well? What didn't they do well? And what's going to happen next for the Ohio State Buckeyes? Will they make it to the College Football Playoff by one of these teams losing this weekend? Or will they have to look forward to another bowl game plus the future? Then we talk about the Cleveland Browns. They get Deshaun Watson back this week. What does that mean for this team? Can they make the playoffs or will they come up short? And finally, we talk about the World Cup. What did the USA do? How are they succeeding? And what will they do next? All that and so much more coming up on the Baseline Podcast. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Baseline Podcast. Just two of us this week. I'm Ben. That's Josh. And we are back. A rough weekend for myself and for many Ohioans out there. But I will say the Cleveland Browns won, guys. That just made my weekend a little bit brighter. Just a little bit. Beat Tom Brady, beat the GOAT, and that just made me a little happy. So we'll get to all the football discussion and everything like that, but I hope you guys have been enjoying. I hope you guys enjoyed last episode. That was so much fun for Josh and I. We didn't get to really
That was a blast.
It was amazing. We didn't really get to
best
say
episode we've done.
Oh, by far. We really didn't get to say it last week, but we were really appreciative of both David and Chris for taking time and hanging out with us. Hopefully we'll have more of that in the future. But yeah, shout out to those guys. They're amazing. Go check out all of their stuff. And also make sure you let us know on the comments, who would you like to see? Who would you like to see come on the show? You know, maybe throw some names out there. Maybe Jared can come back in and talk about how the United States beat Iran. We'll get to that as well. But first off, Josh, what are we going to start today's show off? And I'm pretty sure everyone knows, but go ahead and introduce it.
Well, yeah, we did our best episode last week. So again, thank you for everybody that listened, tuned in, shared it, commented, what have you. But as you all know, that game did not go as Ben and other Ohio State fans had hoped. I am repping my team, Florida Gators. This is the only weekend that both of our teams lost. So just kind of showing moral support that we suck too. And in the spirit of losers, also got the LA Dodgers hat on as well because it matched. But anyway, Ben, I don't know if you want to just get some things off your chest here, because I know a lot of the weaknesses that we pointed out in Ohio State against these lesser teams like Iowa, Northwestern, what have you. I think all of those came to fruition on Saturday. It looked like Ohio State may have underestimated Michigan, or at least was overmatched once again. But I guess, what do you have to say, Ben? Because some people are saying that this all came down to 5 plays, but you can't just erase those 5 explosive plays that Michigan had and say, well, if you take away, the 85-yarder and the 75-yarder and the 65-yarder and the 50 whatever yarder, then, then they only had 60 yards and we win the game 42-0. Like, you can't do that. Those plays happened.
Yeah, it is interesting. And before you talk, I'm pretty sure you're wearing that Florida shirt because you and my dad were going off of it on Facebook today before we were filming this. So
I woke up. Funny side story. I woke up and there were 4 comments on an article that I shared about Ryan Day being compared to Larry Coker, and I was like, whoa.
And it's my father.
Wait a minute, but it was all good. It was
all good. Yeah, and my dad, he's just trying to give you a hard time. But no. To go off what you said, Josh, I was never one, even after the game, my dad and I were talking and another one of my friends here in Hungary that is a Ohio State fan. And, it has nothing to do with those plays, right? Like, they were going to happen. They happened, whatever. It was the fact that you had a chance to blow this game wide open in the first half. You looked like you were going to early on. This is what I'll say this, and this might be a shock to many Ohio State fans, but I do believe that if you go up 28-3 or 24-6, 24-10 going into halftime, that is a different ball game than a 20-17 when Michigan's a second half team and all Michigan's going to do is like, we don't have to change anything. We're just going to keep doing what we're doing. So my thing is that I felt like they did not capitalize on those opportunities in the first half. And on top of that, I also feel like they really hurt themselves many times. They had that 35-yard penalty because of a holding and then a stupid personal foul. And you have all these things add up, right? But I want to say this to all the Ohio State fans out there. I'm not saying to fire Ryan Day, right? I told Josh, I said, I'm glad I didn't do this on Sunday. We talked about doing it on Sunday, and I just kind of said, no, and part of it was just me. I needed to kind of recalibrate what is happening, right? And I'll just say this. Do I think Ryan Day is the best person for the job at Ohio State right now? I believe so. And that's coming from hearing a lot of people that are on the inside of the Woody a lot of the time. And they truly feel like he can be. The difference is that Ryan Day, and I'm going to say this right now, and it's the one thing that frustrates me most. Ryan Day needs to stop calling plays. He's a genius. No one says anything else. But when was the last coach that called plays win a national title? Urban Meyer didn't call plays. Look at Lincoln Riley. He loses all these big games, and he's the one calling plays. There's no one that's calling plays because they can't handle the situations. Look at G. Scott. You saw him headbutt the guy. That should be a head coach handling that situation. Instead, it's an assistant handling the situation. So what I'm saying is that there are things that can be done to flip the switch. I'm not saying reset. I use the word reset. I don't mean to go out and fire everyone. No, I'm not saying that. But hey, there are some adjustments that can be made. There are some coaching decisions that can be different. And I think for me, it was really frustrating because I felt like, and I still feel that if it was coached right, like Michigan, I'm going to give my hats off to Michigan. They were coached well. They were disciplined, everything like that. And hats off to them. But I will say this, if Ohio State would have been as coached that well, I truly believe it was head to head again. I believe Ohio State is still the better team. I think talent wise, execution wise, when they're at their best, Ohio State is a better team. But that being said, they got outplayed. They got outcoached. They got outsmarted on many different things. Like, we were talking about the 4th and 5 that should have been a fake punt that was executed. Michigan would have done that. They would have executed it. And these are little things that add up. Yeah, of course, those big plays. Well, if we would take those away, I still believe that we could have lost that game still with those big plays being taken away. And so, honestly, Josh, it was really frustrating as an Ohio State fan. And I'll be honest with you, this one hurts worse than last year. And this one hurts probably.
It does.
This one hurts more. This one's probably as painful as the Iowa loss back in 2017. That was like, wow, we got beat. And the worst part about it is that image at the end of the game when they put the flag in the center of the field. And I'll be honest with you. And Anthony Schlegel said this on the podcast. He said, just so you know, if Jim Tressel was the head coach, that thing would have been laminated and put on every single locker, and it's going to stay there until next year when you go to Ann Arbor and you can lay some wood. And I believe, and I truly believe, this is a test for Ryan Day. If Ryan Day truly wants to be the head coach at Ohio State, or let's be honest, any Division I program, then you have to get your bootstraps together, right? You took the week off this week. Whatever happens on Friday and Saturday, if you don't make it, okay, then let's prepare for next year. If you do make the playoff, what the possibility is that you face Michigan at some point. I truly believe that Ryan Day needs to sit down and go, what do I want to be? Do I want to be more of a CEO that can manage this whole program? Or do I want to be that glorified offensive coordinator as a head coach? Because if that question's answered and he can truly be that CEO that we saw Urban Meyer be and Jim Tressel be before him, then I believe this is not a John Cooper. This is not a Larry Coker. This is a Ryan Day that can do some damage. And so again, Josh, it's disappointing, but for some reason today I woke up and I was like, you know what, whatever happens. And if we don't make the playoff, like, yeah, I'm gonna be disappointed. But at the same time, I hear people, well, I don't want to make it. We didn't beat Michigan. I'm like, dude, if you get an opportunity to play for a national title, you take it no matter what the cost. Right. So for me, at the end of the day, man, there was a lot of disappointment. But I still think the future is bright with this team. I think CJ Stroud learned that, he feels like everyone's judging him harshly. I'm like, yeah, you came to Ohio State to beat Michigan, to win a Big Ten and win a national title, and you've done none of that. I'm going to judge you harshly because it might not be your fault, but that's what people are going to view your legacy as. He should have won the Heisman this year. If he would have walked in there and dominated, his Heisman's his, no matter what Caleb Williams does. And so for me, I think there's a lot that was left out there, and we never saw the true Ohio State team that I think we all thought we were going to see at the beginning of the year. We have not seen that full team, and I would love to see it. I would love to see them against Georgia or someone like that, but at the end of the day, it's not up to us anymore. But yeah, that is my rant. Josh, I hope that explains things from my perspective. Hope you get a little understanding from my perspective. Maybe I'm not as crazy as some of the other Ohio State, but I'm trying to be more logical.
Yeah, that is another reason, like you said, that we decided to push us off a little bit. Plus, we get to see the college football playoff rankings and then a couple other things. Yeah. So, and you get a little bit more level heads. I ran a poll on my Instagram on Monday when everything kind of cooled down, and about 33% said fire Ryan Day. I personally don't think so, but I agree with you on your take on the coaching. Like Michigan outcoached Ohio State in this one. We can go back to last year, you go and spend $2 million on Jim Knowles, and the defense was improved. Like, don't get me wrong. From last year to this year, big
Totally different,
difference.
yeah.
But if you pay $2 million to a dude, you can't allow more points in that game than we did last year. Like, you brought Jim Knowles in to help you beat Michigan first off. Jesse Minter, on the other side for Michigan, what a game called by him. Like, Ohio State was making moves down the field. Like, I think they ended up with 495 total yards, but only the 23 points and only 3 points in the second half. Like, bravo to Jesse Minter. And then on the note for Ryan Day, like the play calling, maybe the moment is too big for Ryan Day. Like you said, when you're calling the plays, you can't handle those G. Scott penalty situations like you could if you weren't. All these plays that he's been calling throughout the year, like these bubble screens that are going nowhere. And I also thought some of the personnel that he was using was kind of odd, like how much he was involving Chip Trayanum and running plays specifically for Xavier Johnson.
When you have Dallin Hayden just sitting
Down
there.
Hayden, that was the guy that I said was going to be my X factor for Ohio State, and I don't even think he saw the field until like late in the third quarter.
And you're playing third string defensive lineman in there in the biggest game of the year. Like
it's that's another thing too, is just all the rotations. Like, it's cool to be deep, but you want to play your best players in these big games. So I'm 100% on board with you on the coaching. I think Michigan outcoached Ohio State in this one, and like I said, I don't think Ryan Day should be fired, but I do also want to say this about the rivalry. Like, the rivalry is back, right?
Which is awesome.
Michigan,
which is awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome. This is not the same Michigan team that Urban Meyer had been beating the crap out of, that Jim Tressel had been beating the crap out of. You don't have like John O'Korn or like Will Spate or Devin Gardner. No disrespect to those guys on the other side. Like, you're dealing with 5-star recruits. You're dealing with huge guys on the line. You're dealing with first-round NFL draft picks now. Like, Michigan is here to stay. I think the rivalry is back. And, I mean, how do I want to say this? Like, it's definitely not the same Michigan team that I guess Ohio State's been accustomed to. Like, they just kind of took for granted the last 2 decades that Michigan was a win. It's not now. And you go to Ann Arbor next year, and J.J. McCarthy and Donovan Edwards are still going to be there. So, as a fan of neither side, I am excited that this rivalry is back, but I don't think it's going to get easier for Ryan Day, especially when you're losing guys like C.J. Stroud, you're losing guys like Cade Stover, you're losing basically almost all your safeties, which, I mean, they were kind of the reason that you lost the game. Yeah, both tackles too. DeJuan Jones is probably gone. Paris Johnson's graduating. So it's time to, crack down, get these guys developed, and like you said, get back to the drawing board. I think before the season started, we both said that Ohio State was going to be 12-0. Like, I thought the revenge tour was real. I thought the home field advantage being at Columbus was real. And the guy that I was watching the game with, my boy Jordan, we were watching that first drive that Ohio State had where they scored a touchdown. And I looked at him and I was like, Ryan Day is not messing around today. There was no like stretch zone runs. Like, there was the reverse with Xavier Johnson, I think got a first down anyway. That's the only kind of those plays that we saw. We saw CJ slinging it. We saw the touchdown. I was like, Ryan Day's locked in, man. They're going to win this game. And then they go up, 10-3. And then JJ gets off the 2 explosive plays, and you're looking at halftime, and Ohio State has outrushed Michigan, I think 124-10. And if you had told me on when we were recording the last podcast that Ohio State was going to outrush Michigan 124-10 by the half, running back, yeah, I'd be like, dude, they're probably up 28-0 at this half. But that wasn't the case. That wasn't the case, because Ohio State, and I mean, this showed up in the second half too, they weren't finishing drives. In these big games, field goals, punts aren't going to cut it. You got to get those touchdowns. You can't have the stupid penalties. You got to be able to stop the big plays. And I mean, that was all those categories I'm pretty sure Ohio State lost on.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, Josh, I think you look at this game, and I know Ohio State fans it's hurting, and I get it, man. I like, my wife didn't understand why I was so sad for, like a day. And it's just because you like, if you live in Ohio, Josh, you know this, even though you're not a fan of either, you know how much this means to Ohio State fans and to Michigan fans alike. This makes or breaks like your year, like as a Ohio State fan. Like, if you beat Michigan, you don't have to hear people at work bashing you or whatever.
If you're CJ Stroud and Ryan Day, you can't talk 365 days a year that the one thing that matters is Michigan, and then go into the press conference and CJ be like, this game doesn't define us, or Ryan Day be like, if we still get in the playoffs, we're a dangerous team. It's like, that's not what you were talking about all season long.
And I think part of it
we were talking about all off season.
I think part of it is that, like, I will give some cut to CJ. I mean, CJ, like, he took it like, I mean, he takes a lot as a quarterback. And I'm more upset at the way Ryan Day said, not as much as what CJ said. I a little bit of what CJ said, but I think with CJ, he's also like, he was also emotional because it is his last home
That
game.
was his last
Yeah.
game in Ohio
With
State
Ryan
uniform,
Day,
probably. He
yeah.
handled the press well, I thought, but
Yeah.
at the same time, like there was no like, I was sick excuse like
Yeah.
last year.
No,
I mean, he
he was
owned
honest.
everything,
Yeah.
but again, it was another empty stat line that he had. Like he
Yeah.
didn't ball out like everybody thought he would.
Now I will say this. Someone asked me this today actually at work because they know I'm a Ohio State fan. They said, do you think that if Ohio State made the playoff, they asked me this, do you think they still are one of the best teams in America? I was like, absolutely. I still think Ohio State at their peak. So when the defense is flowing, when the offense is playing the way it has been at the beginning of the year, I think Ohio State's, if not the best, one of the top 3 best teams in the country. The question is now you've put it out of your hands, right? This is not in your hands anymore. This is in the committee's hands. And they have shown that they like you. And they didn't say, like last night, they said, they didn't get blown out and move on. No, they said like, we really are impressed by Ohio State, which if you're an Ohio State fan, you're like, wow, I'm shocked. Cause normally you get trampled by Alabama.
We did see them against Penn State, who's a very good team, explode in the fourth quarter. Like they are capable of that.
Exactly. And I think if I would say this, I think Ohio State would have been 4 in the college football rankings if they would have only lost to Michigan by 3. They would be at number 4 right now. I truly believe that.
You can't get blown out on your home field.
No,
like that.
And that's the thing. So, anyways,
the fact that they're only 5 even is like, wow, you know.
But I think it was that
everybody talks about how the committee's biased towards Alabama. Everybody thought that maybe Bama would be the 5, but Ohio State's at 5.
Yeah, I think
part of it play this weekend.
Yeah, I think part of it is the way they respected Ohio State all year. They always were at 2 or 3, and mainly at 2. They never were slipping down. It was always respect with Ohio State, and so I think that played a factor in. And speaking of the college football playoff, we'll touch on that here in a bit. But before we get to the college football playoff, Josh, I do want to ask you, as someone that wasn't in neutral, it was neutral in the game, right? Do you feel like if this Ohio State team plays at their peak level, like we saw at the beginning of the year, right? After the Notre Dame game, the next few games there, do you feel if this team's at their peak, they are one of the best 3 to 4 teams in the country?
One of the best 3 to 4. Yeah, it's tough to say just because everybody's been in conference. Like TCU, credit to them being undefeated. They've played a lot of teams with their backup quarterbacks and only beaten them by 1 score. We've seen Max Duggan have some slip ups, and the defense more so win games against Texas. And I think the other one was Texas Tech. We saw them have to rush onto the field to kick that game-winning field goal against Baylor. Like I know it is tough to go undefeated, but we are seeing them kind of get some close calls here. We saw USC. The only loss they've had all year is on that 2-point conversion to Utah. Like even last week against UCLA, as fun as that game was to watch, UCLA was still in striking distance, even though Dorian Thompson-Robinson had thrown 3 or 4 picks in that game. The defense on USC's, you could say it's below average. They really rely on turnovers. And I mean, that kind of showed in the UCLA game when UCLA still has a chance to win with all those interceptions. I think it would come down to matchups. Like I think the Ohio State's definitely in the top 5. Like they're going to be in my top 5 power ranking when we list all that out. But to go 3 or 4, like I don't think that they would match up well against USC. I think Caleb Williams would shred that secondary even more so than what JJ McCarthy did. I think that, TCU, Ohio State might be fun to watch, but I don't really want to watch them have to play. This is the other thing too, is I feel like Ohio State, Georgia would be maybe a better matchup for the team than USC, if that even makes sense.
Yeah, but I mean, I think
here's just to kind of wrap that up. I think Ohio State would give any of those teams a good game. I don't know if they would beat, those teams at the top. Like at their best, if they don't have some of those mistakes, maybe they can compete better with Michigan. Georgia, maybe a little bit better of a matchup, but top 5 for sure. I don't know about 3rd or 4th though.
I'll say this: if you're the committee, right? Let's move into our college football discussion, Josh. So if you guys don't know, I'm going to just state. So at number 1, we had Georgia, 2 at Michigan. A little controversy there, but not really. 3 we had TCU, 4 USC, 5 Ohio State, then 6 Alabama, and 7 Tennessee. That's a little interesting, but I will get on that in a second.
Yeah, I
I
know
think it's
people have been
stupid,
talking
but
about
that's
that.
stupid.
Bama losing the head to head, but it's
That's
like right
dumb.
now Tennessee without Hendon Hooker isn't the same team.
No.
So I get why they did that.
Someone did say though, but they put up 59 points against Vanderbilt. I'm like, can you repeat that? Just repeat it for yourself.
Well, Florida didn't put up 59 points
well,
on Vanderbilt.
Well, that's Florida. No, I will say this. Listen, you've been giving me digs all week. I get at least one in.
Yeah, you do.
No, I will say this. I think so. We'll look at this, right? So we know that if Georgia or Michigan, even if they lose, they're in. So we know 1 and 2 are in.
Yeah,
no matter what. All right.
Those two aren't.
Now here,
going
let's go through
anywhere.
some scenarios, Josh. Let's go through some scenarios here. So
Yeah.
let's go on Saturday. If 1, 2, 3, 4 win, there's no debate. It's over.
Right.
All
It's
4
going to
teams
stay
go.
the same.
Right.
Yep.
It goes that way. And the interesting part of this is if, let's say, and so we all know that would happen, then Ohio State would either go to the Rose Bowl or Orange Bowl. What I'm hearing from reports from certain people that are in the media close to Ohio State is that Ohio State's actually pushing not to go to the Rose Bowl to face Washington. They're actually pushing to go to the Orange Bowl and face the winner of North Carolina Clemson.
I've heard that too.
And they're letting Penn State go to the Rose Bowl. And I understand. I mean, you've been to the Rose Bowl like 4 times in the last like 6 years. Like it really would get old. So that would be interesting. I would love to see it like a North Carolina Ohio State matchup or even a Clemson rematch with Ohio State. That'd be really cool to watch.
Speaking of, since you just brought up Clemson, I just randomly remember, and I'm not taking any shots at our boy Chris, but you remember when he said Clemson's more so their rival than Michigan?
That is funny. And I love how he never mentioned that the last few times he's been on. I think he just kind of realized that he was kind of stupid by saying that. Love you, Chris. It is. So anyways, so that would happen. Alabama would go to the Sugar Bowl and they would face whoever. I think it's the Big 12 champ, which then would be Kansas State. Oh, that would be a blowout. Oh, why would I even want to watch that? So there'd be that game, and then so on and so on. The real interesting thing is, and we'll get to some of the coaching hires here after this, but so if you, let's say then on Friday night, so if anybody doesn't know, Friday night, the Pac-12 plays their championship game, which is weird. I'm sorry, that's just stupid.
I think they did that just so everybody could watch all the games instead of them all being on the same day.
True.
Which, cool. I'm glad they did that. But Friday night, yeah, interesting.
It's weird. And then Saturday, we have obviously all the other championship games. Now, if Friday, Utah beats USC, we now have a Utah champ once again, and they beat USC now twice. USC will have 2 losses. This is the most reasonable, and I think Josh will agree with me, this is the most easy way for Ohio State to get back in the playoffs would be for USC to lose, because then USC would probably drop to, I'm guessing, 5 or 6, one of the two.
100%.
And you would have
not a conference champ, 2 losses.
Yeah. And I think that would be, and you'll have USC fans, but well, we competed for a conference championship. Like, you have 2 losses to the same team.
And you're not a conference champion.
Exactly.
So,
and the thing is, the one thing that helps Ohio State, Josh, and I think you'll admit to this as well, is that the fact that they're the only 1-loss team right now in the top 10.
That's what they got going for them.
They're the
LSU,
only 1-loss team.
Before they lost to Texas A&M, and in that scenario where maybe they beat Georgia, they're a 2-loss champ. Like, sure, but you still had 2 losses, and the committee still has never let a 2-loss team in. Bama has been a 2-loss team that has been left out. Penn State has been a 2-loss conference champ that has been left out. Ohio State last year, and even in the past, I think they've been a 2-loss conference champ, not getting in. So,
yeah. So if USC would lose, then Ohio State would easily jump in, and it wouldn't even be a question. That would be automatic. Now, the more weird one gets is if USC wins, but TCU loses. Now, a lot of people are kind of 50-50 on this, because some are saying, well, you can't really penalize TCU. They were undefeated going into now they're 12-1. They'll have 1 more win than Ohio State. But then you look at Ohio State's wins, and they have the one against Penn State, which looks really good right now, and their only loss would be to Michigan.
All their wins are by double digits.
Yeah. And so that one's more interesting. I want to hear Josh's take. Would you say, like, let's say USC wins, they would move to 3. Would you give it to TCU, or would you give it to Ohio State in that moment? Or what do you think the committee would do if that would happen?
Well,
Would they keep TCU out? Would they keep TCU out twice now with Ohio State?
I've heard the 2014 scenario brought up, like TCU being 3, their last win, they won by 50, and then Ohio State blows out Wisconsin 59-0, wherever in the Big Ten championship. Yeah. And then they jump up into the playoff and TCU doesn't. And the reason for that was TCU didn't have a conference championship game. So Ohio State impressed enough players that they bumped them into it. And they both had one loss in that scenario. But this time around, TCU is the team that's playing this weekend. Ohio State is not. And TCU being 3, would one loss bump them down to that 5 range. I feel like the committee is rooting for that because the Ohio State brand would be better for the playoff than the TCU brand.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it would happen. I think they would just bump USC to 3, put Ohio State 4, and TCU would be at 5 on the outside looking in, unfortunately. Just the timing of the loss, too, like if you lose early in the season, it does seem to work out better for you. I'm not necessarily agreeing that TCU should be left out, but I think that would be what would happen is Ohio State would slide in, TCU out.
And I think literally the committee, though, to be honest, is looking at that Ohio State-Michigan rematch. That's what they want. I really think that's what they want. They want that rematch. That brought them 17 million viewers during this last week's game. Can you imagine what it would be in the playoff for a national title? Can you imagine? Oh, my word. I don't
think that, I mean, for them to face in the first round, I don't think that's likely just because you would need a Michigan or a Georgia loss for that to happen as well. But the possibility of a rematch in the national championship, like how we got with Georgia and Alabama last year after the SEC championship, I think that's super intriguing.
Yeah. Now here's the third scenario. Both USC and TCU loses, which I believe is very actually realistic to me in my head. That I think there's a good shot. I think out of the two, USC has more of a chance to lose, I believe, because I think their defense is absolutely awful at times. Like, it's just got a lot of holes in it, and especially their pass defense lately. Like Utah last time, they threw for 400 yards. So my question is, Josh, what happens if there is both those teams lose? Who goes in? Does Alabama slip in, or does it TCU stays and Ohio State?
I think you got to, in that case, stick with the one loss. USC would slide out. TCU would slide down from 3 to 4, put Ohio State in at 3. You get the Michigan-Ohio State rematch in the first round. Yeah.
It makes me flutter a little bit inside.
I think that rematch
would be amazing.
Would be it. Yeah, it'd be insane ratings. I think Fox said that there were 17 million viewers for the first match. Imagine that second time with no other games going on. What that kind of audience would be like. But yeah, I don't think that there's any scenario that Bama gets in being 2 losses. No. There's always going to be a 1-loss team in any of these scenarios that we do that could get in ahead of them.
So then my thing is then I think we both think that if Georgia or Michigan lose, then it would just be a shuffling of numbers.
That's all would happen. Yeah, if they both lose, they might throw
Michigan be USC, the one that would drop the most. Michigan, if they lost to Purdue, would probably drop to 4.
That's bad. I think that they still, even with LSU having 3 losses, be like, well, SEC. So Georgia just falls maybe 1 or 2 spots.
So we've talked about all those scenarios, right? And we discuss each one. Like we said, most realistically, it's probably going to be all 4 win. Like, knowing me and like my love for
I think so too. I mean, these playoff situations always seem to work themselves out. So I think all of them are just going to win this weekend.
Yeah, but let's go. We'll touch game by game here in a second. But it's very interesting to me if you look at these games. Let's be honest. Caleb Williams did not show up until the last 4 weeks of the season.
He's been heating up, man. He's been heating up.
Josh, we have said over and over that the Heisman always comes down to like the last 4 weeks of the year. What do you do?
Well, those were also his biggest games too, which also works for his favor too.
Yeah.
And he's going to have another one here with the Utah game.
And that's the thing. If there's anybody in this podcast that's been more for pro Utah, it has been that man right there in that seat. That man has lived and died by Utah being one of the top teams. And then he just gave up after a while. But I will say, Utah, the thing is the way that Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams have been talking about Utah, you should be careful because they've been saying some like, oh, this is our game, whatever. And I love how Utah's coach came out. I was like, okay, sure. Yeah, just count us out like we're not here. Because I would say Utah can pose a big threat to USC.
They can. They're definitely not a team that you can overlook. But yeah, I'm excited for that one. Also not gonna lie, we're gonna see this in the Heisman rankings later, but I'm kind of glad that Caleb Williams has been balling out. Makes it a little bit easier to kind of rank these, I think.
Does it?
Mm-hmm.
Does it?
A lot of people are falling out, Ben. Hendon Hooker doesn't have his case anymore. I don't think Blake Corum can win it. I think he can still get an invite. Yeah. CJ not winning that game isn't really going to help him out. Max Duggan's kind of had some inconsistencies. Bo Nix has had some slowdown with his injuries. Drake May's had some bad losses. So I think I know I'm kind of spoiling my Heisman leader, but it's making it really easy to put Caleb at number one right now, like what David Cohn was saying.
Unless Caleb just absolutely has a bomb game this week and they lose, that's the only way CJ Stroud slips back in.
If Caleb bombs in the conference championship, that'd be bad.
So anyways, let's go ahead and predict these games, Josh, because I feel like mainly these four, we're not going to go through all the conference championship games. I'm sorry, people. Some of these games, no one cares about the MAC championship. Okay. I'm sorry. No one cares. No, really, they don't. But let's go ahead and talk about these games. Josh, which one do you want to start with? Which conference championship game do you want to start with?
Start with the SEC, Georgia LSU.
Yeah. This is easy for me. LSU has seemingly faded over the last few weeks, and I'm going to go Georgia. I'm going to go Georgia 27, and I'm going to go LSU 13. I just think LSU is not going to be able to score on Georgia, so I'm going to go 27-13 Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, credit to LSU. I think they're way more ahead with Brian Kelly in his first year than what I thought they would. 8-4.
Both give credit.
Never would have guessed 8-4. I would have guessed more like around the 6-6 range. But Georgia, 17.5 point favorite for anybody that cares. I don't see them losing this game. No. Like Georgia is everybody's close, but I think Georgia's like the clear-cut number one team in the country right now. They'd be my national championship prediction right now. I'm gonna go ahead and say Georgia easily wins this. That 17.5 though might be a little tough for them to cover, but LSU also does at the same time start off slow. So
what's your score prediction?
Score prediction this one, let's give Georgia a 31-20 victory.
Okay.
I'm not going to say they cover that, but definitely double-digit win.
What about the next game? What's the next game on the docket?
Let's rock with our boys still kind of down south, Clemson, North Carolina.
Oh, this one's a tough one for me.
This one sounded a lot more fun of a matchup a couple weeks ago than it did now.
Hey, I don't have DJ in my Heisman finals. Okay, Josh, don't have to bash me on that.
I will not bring it up. He played poorly and you corrected it. So I'm gonna credit you for making the change.
I'm actually gonna go North Carolina here. I don't know. Clemson has been so shaky on offense that at least we know with North Carolina, they have a crap defense and they have a good offense. We know what we get with North Carolina. Mm-hmm. I don't know what I'm going to get with Clemson. And I think North Carolina's going to go in there, and I think Drake May's going to have a big game. And I think it's going to be, I'm going to go 34-24 North Carolina.
Yeah. I mean, quarterbacks in this one could be interesting because I think Drake May and DJU both could be auditioning for potential transfer portal suitors.
Ohio State.
Hopefully you're talking Drake May to Ohio State.
Yes, I am. Instead, I am. Yes.
But Clemson's 7.5 point favorite. I'm kind of thinking the same as you. Clemson, we really do not know what we can get from them right now. Georgia has been going against some more of the tougher defenses on their schedule. So Clemson also kind of has a good defense, but to me, if Spencer Rattler can put up 31 on you, I think Drake May can put up 40 on you.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and say that North Carolina wins. I don't think it's a blowout. I'm going to go more so. Let's go with North Carolina 42, Clemson 35. Similar result as the Wake Forest Clemson game.
Got it.
Let's see. Let's continue to move up the map. Purdue and Michigan. Michigan is 17-point favorite right now in this one.
Okay, well, this is not even close. It's going to be Michigan. I'm going to go Michigan. They're going to run the ball all over Purdue, and it's going to be like Purdue. I think will hang in there at the beginning because one, Michigan's a terrible first half team, and two, Purdue can actually throw the ball, and they actually have one of the best receivers in the Big Ten. Secretly, one of the best receivers in the Big Ten. And I'm going to go Michigan 45, Purdue 17. I don't think it's going to be close.
Yeah, Michigan, What'd they do last year? They defeated Iowa in the Big Ten championship.
It was
Something wild, like
38-3.
I thought they put up over 40.
It was 40. Yeah, it was 45-3. Yeah.
I expect Purdue's offense to put up a little bit more than that, but similar final score. I think Michigan easily covers this 17-point spread. I'm going to go with Michigan. Let's go Michigan 45, Purdue 20.
And that's the thing, as an Ohio State fan, I just want to point out is that you knew if you win that Michigan game, it's almost a guarantee win in the Big Ten championship.
It is.
And like that's what's
the Big
so
Ten West was so bad.
And this is the thing, and this is why I agree. The Big Ten should just get rid of conferences and then just have.
You mean divisions?
Sorry, and just have the two best teams play, and that's what it should be. I feel like that's what it should be, but that's besides the point.
Yeah, there's arguments on both sides. That on one, it makes that game so much more important. Yeah. Because it's like everything, the playoff spot, the conference championship all runs through that game. You got to win it. There's no second chances.
No, I agree. Yeah.
So that's like the argument on the other side. But on the same time, it's like nobody thinks Purdue's the second best team in the conference. Nobody thinks that Purdue should be playing for this game.
They're not even the fourth best team in the conference right now.
Yeah.
So anyway,
it's crazy.
So we got that one down.
We'll move west now and go into TCU, Kansas State.
We're going like north, south. Then
we started southeast. We moved up, and now we're going out. Yes. So TCU, Kansas. TCU's had a lot of close spreads lately, Ben. Yeah. The Baylor one, I think, was about 2 points. I can't remember the spread with Iowa State, I think it was last week. But this one, another close one, 2.5 points. I believe Will Howard is still playing quarterback for Kansas State in this one. Believe the first time these teams played, it was something along the lines of a 38-31 final score. That was actually the game that Adrian Martinez got injured in. I know as a Buckeye fan, you're kind of rooting for Kansas State. No, in this I'll be honest. Do you think they can pull it off this second time around?
As an Ohio State fan, I want Kansas State to win, but I just believe that Kansas State without Adrian Martinez, I don't know if they're gonna have enough juice. And so I'm actually gonna go TCU wins this game 34-31 on a last second field goal. I like all of me wants to say Kansas State, but there's just something about one that every time I pick a team to win, they always end up losing. So I'm just going to hope for this whole thing to happen. Right. But I'm going to go, I just think TCU at the end of the day will have enough firepower to get by Kansas State. But I will tell you this, I think if TCU will lose their first game in the playoff, I don't see TCU winning the first game in the playoff. I do not.
Yeah, I want to quickly correct myself. TCU did not struggle with Iowa State last week. That was 62-14. Yeah. But the week before that, TCU 29-28 against Baylor. TCU 17-10 against Texas. TCU 34-24 against Texas Tech. TCU 41-31 West Virginia. 10-point game against Kansas State that first time around. 3-point game against Oklahoma State. 7-point game against Kansas. This is going to be close. I don't know if it's 2 points close, but I think TCU does win this one, and I'm going to go ahead and say their defense gets a couple stops because their defense has been picking it up lately. That was the concern early on with TCU was we know that Max Duggan, the offense can cook, but can the defense get enough stops? They've been shutting down some good offenses here in the Big 12 lately too. So I'm going to say that they do that against Will Howard the second time around.
I will say the only way Kansas State can win this game is they're very good running the ball. If they can run the ball and keep Duggan if they can keep him off the field, then I believe that's the one way Kansas State can win.
Yep, this might be the Deuce Vaughn game here if Kansas State wins, but I'm going to go ahead and say that TCU wins this one 32-25.
Okay. You're a weird score sometimes. They're so weird when they add them up. It's just weird.
They can be. And then finally, wrapping up the Power 5 conference championships, Utah and USC. They're mad respect in Utah and Vegas right now. USC is a 2.5-point favorite in this one as well.
Yeah.
And it was a 1-point game the first time around. Came down to that 2-point conversion, I believe, in overtime.
See, Josh, all of me wants to just say USC is going to lose. But then there's part of me that just goes, as an Ohio State fan, and this is the way it is as an Ohio State fan, we all know that what's going to happen is all 4 teams win on Saturday and Friday. This is just what happens as a Ohio State fan. You give it up to somebody else, it's just going to be screwed over. So I believe, my gut tells me, I think Utah pulls this out in some way. I don't know how, and I don't know if it's a safety. I don't know what it is, but there's going to be something that happens because we saw what Utah did to Ohio State last year. Like, this team just does not quit fighting, and they're the most physical, they're more like the Big Ten team than they are a Pac-12 team. And I believe Utah is going to win this game. I'm going to say 38-34. It's going to come down to the last few plays. I think Caleb Williams think Utah's going to do enough to contain his legs force him just to beat him with his arm, which we know he can, but saying, hey, we'll stop everything else, just beat us with our arm. That's the only thing we're going to give up. So I'm going to say Utah squeaks this one out 38-34.
One thing I find interesting, Ben, about these conference championship games is like these teams that truly are in playoff contention almost always seem to win these.
Yeah.
Like Clemson's never had a struggle in the ACC title game.
It's also the ACC, though.
Yeah. I mean, Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, regardless who you throw in there, they've never seemed to have struggled. I mean, we've seen Oregon, Utah, and like some of these other teams get upset in the Pac-12 championship when nothing's on the line, right? Like both teams already have 2 losses, neither's getting the playoffs. But it seems like these teams, like they just almost always rise to the occasion. I'm going to go ahead and say that USC does the same in this one. But I still think close game once again. I think USC can get that 40-point mark. I'm going to go ahead and say they get 40. I'm going to give Utah 37. This is going to be close.
Okay, I will say this before we finish up this talk. What is your percentage? Which game do you feel has the most likely chance for an upset? Which has the most least amount of chance for an upset?
Most likely chance is the Utah USC, I think, because Utah's already gotten that win. They're not a team to mess with. They really haven't been blown out in any of these games that they've lost either. No. Like you got to respect them. Kansas State, I know they are going with Will Howard instead of Adrian Martinez, but they still are a 9-3 team. They've beaten some good teams this year, so I would probably put that second. I don't give LSU really any chance. I don't give Purdue really any chance. I'd say Clemson and North Carolina. Actually, Clemson, North Carolina, I'm going to throw them in the middle.
Yeah.
We know that DJU at his best can win you a game, but we don't really see DJU at his best that much.
Yeah. I think that I agree with you on all those, and I think at the end of the day, I think you're going to have a really interesting week of games. And I'll be honest, I'll just say this, Josh, if Utah pulls out a win on Friday, I think every Ohio State fan will be sending the biggest basket of gifts to Utah. Like you will see Ohio State University like have a campus inside of Utah's campus. They'll be like, we will put up our own, because this is the thing. Like again, and I believe this with the bottom of my heart, I think if Ohio State's in the playoff, they are a dangerous team. And I agree with what Ryan Day said. The question is what team you get. Do you get the Michigan team or do you get the team against Penn State? Which team do you get? That's the question. And so on. So we could spend hours talking on this, but Josh, I think it's time, probably for the last time before these awards are decided, and really the power rankings are all decided.
I think they announced the ballot on December 5th.
So why don't we talk about power rankings, and then we will move on to our Heisman watch list. And then we'll talk about some NFL briefly and some soccer to finish up the show. How's that sound, Josh?
Sounds like a plan, Ben.
All right. So here we go. Let's pull up the list from last week. We had 4 people last week, Josh. We were rolling last week. So last week, power ranking stood as this. Myself, I had 1 was Georgia, 2 Ohio State, 3 was Michigan, 4 was TCU, 5 was USC. Josh had Georgia 1, Ohio State 2, Michigan 3, TCU 4, USC 5. David had
I think we all had the same, didn't we? In this one?
Did we? Oh, we did. But I need to also say David. David had Georgia 1, Ohio 2. That's right. Michigan 3, TCU 4, and USC 5. And then Chris obviously had the same. So I know there's going to be some shakeup. I'm guessing, Josh, if I'm going to guess yours right, I'm pretty sure I can guess. You just basically moved everyone else up 1 and then dropped Ohio State to 5. Is that right?
I'm basically in agreement with the committee, which doesn't happen often. But yeah, Georgia 1, Michigan 2, TCU 3, USC 4, and Ohio State at 5.
I think they
got it right.
Yeah, I think they did get it right. The only one I was thinking about was maybe putting Michigan 1. That was just because Georgia kind of
have the best win.
Yeah,
Michigan does have the best win this year.
But I have Georgia 1. I think Georgia overall is the best team overall. I think Michigan's the second best team by far. I think there's a 1 and 2, and then there's the gap. And then TCU, then USC, and then 5 I have Ohio State. So those are my 5 teams. I don't know who our guest this week is. We'll figure it out. Josh and I always figure it out. We usually just text somebody and they'll answer us. So yeah, those are our power rankings. Josh, I don't think we have any quarrels over those, but the quarrels might happen
in this Heisman ballot, man. It's tough right now.
So here we go.
Here
we go. I'm going to read these from last week. They're a little different. I think each of them are a little different. So I had CJ Stroud 1, Caleb Williams 2, Drake May 3, Max Duggan 4, Blake Corum 5. Josh had CJ Stroud 1, had Caleb Williams 2, Blake Corum 3, Drake May 4, and Bo Nix 5. David Cohn had Caleb Williams 1. Seems like he was onto something. Blake Corum 2, CJ Stroud 3, Drake May 4, Michael Penix Jr. 5. Keep that name in mind for somebody. Chris had CJ Stroud 1, Caleb Williams 2, Max Duggan 3, Blake Corum 4. He had Marvin Harrison Jr. at 5.
He told me, he's Chris. Like, I literally don't know who else right now, man.
Of course.
It's like, oh, of course.
But honestly, he's not that far, though. Honestly, not that far off.
Blitnikoff for sure in that talk.
He should. Hyatt probably will win it, but he should win it. Anyways, how about you start with yours, and then I'll go mine this time.
Well, I've been looking for an excuse to get CJ Stroud out of number 1. I think I've had CJ at number 1 all year. He has not fallen out of it. And I know you convinced me the one time that I was like, no one deserves it right now. Everybody's tied for second right now. Now I have my reason to take him out. So congratulations, Caleb Williams, for heating up at the end of the season in all your biggest games. You have made it to number 1 in my ballot for now. Number 2, I am going to say, CJ did enough this year overall to be number 2. I think all the efficiency stats are there. The total touchdowns are there. A lot of other people being injured or having their cases just collapse also helps that. So I'm going to go ahead and put CJ at 2. This is where it gets tough for me because Blake Corum's definitely a finalist for me, even though he didn't play in this game. I just don't think he can win it now. So I'm going to put Blake down at 5, definitely deserves it. My 3 and 4, though, this is where it gets tough because Bo Nix is out of my ballot now. I think his injuries have kind of caught up with him. He hasn't been himself the last couple games. Drake May, I mean, it's always been about the numbers with him.
Is Max Duggan back?
Max Duggan is back. Max Duggan is back up at 3. I'm going to keep Drake in there for all the totals that he's got at 4. I almost had Michael Penix in here, man, but I think more of his numbers are just because of how much Washington passes the ball
all the time.
Yeah, his touchdowns don't compare to some of these other guys. His yards per attempt don't compare to some of these other guys, but the total yards are all there. I wouldn't be mad if someone had him in their top 5 like David did last week. But just to recap, Caleb Williams 1, CJ Stroud 2, Max Duggan 3, Drake May 4, Blake Corum 5.
That's a good list. It's pretty similar to mine. I'm kidding. No, I have Caleb Williams 1. Caleb Williams 1. I do think, though, if Caleb Williams does have a bad game in the conference playoff, in the conference championship game, then I do believe there's a discussion for CJ Stroud to be then number 1. I think Caleb's above CJ, but I don't think he's as above as what the Vegas is telling you he is. I think it's not that clear of a gap. I think it's just the way he wins games. But I do think if you look at overall, CJ Stroud has got one of the best seasons out there, even though it was a worse season than last year. So I'm going to have Caleb Williams 1, CJ Stroud 2. At 3, I have Drake May still. It was weird. I don't know where to put Drake May. Don't know.
I think he has to play some part in these last couple losses because against Georgia Tech, they only scored 17. I think they scored in the 20s against NC State, which that's the best defense he's faced all year at the same time, but still.
Yeah, so I'm going to keep Drake May at 3. 4, I'm going to have Max Duggan. And at 5, I agree with you that Blake Corum should be there, but for me at 5, I have actually Penix Jr. The way he's played some of these games, he's not going to be flashy, but he throws the ball, and he throws the ball really well. And he does, and he in that offense, you're going to throw the ball a lot. But I mean, I can't. It's the same thing with Drake May. He has different numbers than what Drake May does, but he's still putting up some pretty good numbers. And I think any team would take a quarterback that's doing what he's doing.
I found my excuse to get CJ out of 1, and you found your excuse to get Blake out of the top 5 entirely.
Hey, you know what? That's what I do over here. I have to win this week. Okay, somewhere. All right, I have to have a win. That is our Heisman watch list for week 14 now. So hope you love those lists. If you don't, please let us know in the comments. Disagree with us. We don't care. We really don't. Honestly, Brian Grant probably has an issue with what I did. So Brian, go ahead and comment. It's fine. So those are our lists. We are now going to shift talk briefly to to the NFL, and then we will spend the last few moments talking about the World Cup. So NFL, Josh, hey, our Brownies beat the GOAT. The Browns beat the GOAT. What can I say?
What can you say, man? I mean, kudos to the defense who's been getting shredded these last several games.
They're this
Ranks
okay. Are the Browns
32nd in
are the,
fantasy scoring,
are the Browns
and
the
they
most the
held the
weirdest
Bucks to
team ever?
17. Very
Are the
weird, dude.
They're the weirdest team. They beat the Bengals soundly, lose the next game by 30, then beat another, then lose again, and then beat another team. It's like this team is the weirdest team. And the thing is, I don't know if I want Deshaun Watson to come back because Brissett has been playing out of his mind this year. He's been playing amazing this year. And yet we're still going to be excited for Deshaun Watson to come back.
I wouldn't go as far as amazing, but he's definitely exceeded expectations I think most had for him. And maybe the win over a team like Tampa Bay and a player like Tom Brady gives you a little bit of momentum going into the next game with Deshaun in his first game back, basically playing a preseason practice squad team against the Houston Texans. Now that I said that, Houston may win that game now. But if you can win that Tampa Bay game, then you can win this Houston game. You got some winnable games on your schedule at the end of the year that aren't going to be as easy as those first 4 that we played, but maybe
they're hanging in there.
You have a shot to go 9-8 and be in wild card contention by the end of the year.
And I'll tell you this, there's a good chance they could beat the Bengals again, the Ravens again, the Steelers again. There's at least 3 wins there. If you can beat those 3, that puts you at, 7-7, and then you figure out the last few games. So it's going to be interesting. I will say one of the surprises of the NFL has been the Vikings, obviously, the Jets, the Giants, a lot of these teams, the
Redskins
Rams
now, even
the Rams being atrocious. Like, honestly, Sean McVay getting hit by his own player, which was kind of funny, to be honest. And then we're not going to talk about the Broncos pick. Okay, moving on. I'll admit I picked the Broncos to go to the Super Bowl, and now I'm looking like the biggest Class 1 idiot of all time.
I picked them to at least win a division.
Yeah, we I think we just expected more from Russell Wilson. He's just been absolutely terrible.
We did.
He's been so bad, and then even the Dolphins have been way better than we thought they were going to be. And who would have said
a team I thought everyone was way too high on?
Yeah, we both said that. And then I was high. I decided to be high on the Saints, and the Saints, they have one of the best. I will say this: Chris Olave has been absolutely amazing.
Chris Olave has been one of the best rookies, man.
And yet they have no quarterback. So CJ Stroud, maybe you can reconnect down there with the Saints, hook up you and Olave up together. I'm just saying. But it's been crazy season so far, Josh. And you look at the Browns, for instance, right? Like, we both agree they have probably some of the most talent in the whole NFL. But it goes to show, if you don't have good coaching, good play calling, good decision makers, and also a suspended quarterback for 11 games, it does not help by any means. And you don't hand the ball off to Nick Chubb, which what happens when they hand the ball to Nick Chubb? They win games. It's just fascinating to me. It's like it's literally the Ohio State Buckeyes at the professional level. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, it's common along the NFL too. Like, anytime you fall behind, like, you just abandon the run game. So not falling behind early, like in the Miami Dolphins game, is key. You got to at least keep it close within 1 score. Preferably get the lead early on, and then you can keep doing what you want to do, which is run with Chubb, kill clock. But
yeah, it's going to be interesting. So this week we have the Texans. Josh, now did we choose? I don't think we chose last week.
We didn't talk about it.
We didn't talk about it.
We both picked Tampa Bay to win.
Yes,
and we were both wrong.
So we were both wrong, which then puts me at. There's been a total of 11 games. I'm now 6.
I don't know the overalls. I just know I'm 3 games back.
No, I know that I'm now 6 and I'm 6-4 now. No, sorry, I'm 7-4 now. So then you are 4-7. That's how I
That'd be it.
Yeah. So you're 4-7. I'm 7-4. So going into this game against the Texans, are we going to be on the same page in this one? Josh, what do you got? What's the score, and who do you got winning it?
I got a Cleveland win, and I don't know how it's going to happen. I mean, are we going to see Deshaun Watson from, like, when he was on the field over 2 years ago, or are we going to see a Deshaun Watson that hasn't played in 2 years and it shows? You know what I mean? So it's like, I think they're going to win, but I don't know how it could be. It could be anywhere from I could see it being anywhere from, honestly, a 30-point win to a 3-point win, to be honest. But I think somehow, some way, they're going to win it.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go a Browns win, and I'm gonna go. So Josh really can't make up any ground on this one. I'm gonna go Browns win, and I'm gonna go Browns win this 34 to like 17. I think the Browns defense hopefully will play better. Deshaun Watson has a lot to prove, and I think he's going to have a big game. I think he'll have a big game. That's just my thoughts. Mari Cooper, saved himself last week after that drop and to end up having a big catch. And I think they're going to run Nick Chubb a lot to kind of keep the Texans off balance of what's going to go on. So
34-17 sounds safe. I would hope that Houston, for my fantasy team's sake, scores a little higher, gets Dameon Pierce a little bit involved. Jeff Wilson gashed us, so hopefully Dameon Pierce can gash us a little bit, but not too much, just enough.
This is why I don't play fantasy, because then I start rooting for players.
Yeah, I know, but I'm gonna go with the Cleveland 34 to 24 win.
There we go. So
I like that a little bit better because Dameon probably got some TDs in that one.
There we go. We have a win. Both of us predict the Browns win, and that will put them at, if they win this game, put them at 5-7, which again is in striking distance. People don't realize the Browns are not out of it yet. They are still in striking distance.
If they lost Tampa Bay, I would have said because then they would have had to win out to just be 9-8, and winning out would be hard.
I think they'll prediction. My personal thought is I think they're gonna finish 9-8 or 8-9 or 10-7, something in that range.
There's still not really much room to slip up, but being able to lose one game is better than having to win them all. So
yeah, that's what I think. So anyways, we're going to switch from the football field to the pitch of soccer, or football as you call it,
or to the other football field,
whatever we're going to call it. But we've had some games, Josh. We have some results as we're doing this. I believe I can actually check as we're doing this. I know there were some matches going on. So Argentina did beat Poland, Josh. So you're still alive for your final.
The championship pick is alive.
Mexico beat Saudi Arabia. That was a surprise. So right now, as we're speaking, I'm going to go over this right now. Right now, Netherlands and Senegal have advanced, which Jared told us about Senegal being I
think we all were in agreement. Yes. Just we differed on who was going to win the group.
Exactly. Then we had England, and obviously the USA had a big game against Iran. Sorry, Iran, according to a reporter. Don't get me started on that. It's the same thing. Sorry, in English, that's how we say it. I'm sorry. If you haven't checked that out, go see David Cohn's rant about that. It's amazing. And then in Group C, we had Argentina, and it looks like Poland's going to go through on goal difference over Mexico. They had 4 points. Wow. Mexico had 4 points, but Poland had a 0 goal difference, and Mexico had a -1 goal difference.
That's crazy, man. That's a long time for Mexico to that Mexico's been getting out of the group stage. I brought that up when we did the episode, so that's crazy if they don't get out.
Yeah, so that it looks like that. And then in Group D, you have France and Australia, the Aussies.
Oh, we didn't see the Aussies coming, man.
No, they actually, believe it or not, listen to this group, Josh. You'll be shocked. France and Australia finished top 2. Then it was Tunisia at 3, and Denmark finished last in the group with 1 point.
Wow, dude.
Yeah, so 1 point for Denmark coming out. Very disappointing for the Danes. But right now we have 3 groups remaining to be decided. The Group E right now, it's Spain leading with 4 points. They also have a 7 goal differential, which is ridiculous. Nice. Japan is third right now. Second right now. Costa Rica is third, and Germany is last right now.
Germany. I think Germany I had Spain being third in that one, and then Germany getting out, if I remember right.
I had Spain, and I think I had Spain and Germany, or I had Japan in there. I can't remember.
I definitely had Japan. I know that.
And then Group F, Croatia and Morocco are tied for the top. Belgium is third, and Canada is going to be eliminated with 0 points right now. They have 1 match left, so they could get a couple points here, but they're going to be knocked out. So no Canadians in there. The Group G, Brazil's already through. So yes, my champion's still through.
Mine too.
Switzerland is second with 3 points. Cameroon and Serbia are tied for third with 1 point. So there'll be still some games played for that. And then Group H, Portugal is through. Speaking of Ronaldo, just want to speakly talk about this. We all know that he's leaving Manchester United. They agreed on that. Most people know that. But by the way, there's a chance he might go to Saudi Arabia. Listen to this, Josh. It's going to blow your mind. 3 years, $365 million. Just think about that for a second. The man's going to make $100 million a year. 100 million.
9 figures a year.
That is nuts. Nuts. Anyways, and then in that group H, Portugal is at 1, Ghana's 2, third is Korea, and fourth is Uruguay. So an interesting group there as well.
That was,
but any surprises for you, Josh, in this before we talk about the USA game?
Man, I mean, first off, Spain with the goal differential is kind of wild, but I don't think anybody would have been shocked for them to get out. I guess just Australia getting through, that was impressive.
Yeah, it's a big the Socceroos is what they're called.
The Socceroos. Who was another surprisingly last place team? Was that Germany? Germany was last
place.
Was one. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a shocker. I think we all thought Denmark was going to get out.
Yeah, Denmark was a big shocker. Yeah.
Yeah.
Qatar got 0 points, just so you know. Lost all 3 matches. So no shocker there. I think for me, Mexico not making it through and
that is kind of a shock. I don't think
really
any of you guys were as high on Mexico as I was. I was mostly just going off history, but
so I'm gonna double check this before we like go off air, and then I'm wrong. So I'm gonna look here. So Mexico, yeah. So it's come to an end. Yeah. So it'd be the winner would be Argentina, and then Poland obviously made it through. So yeah, so that was interesting for me. I think the way that Wales played against the United States and then finished last in the group was really interesting for me. But yeah, very interesting overall. France obviously dominating like normal. And so my thing is that this USA Iran game, I mean, Christian Pulisic got kicked in the nuts, and yet he still won the game. Like that nuts, goal, dude. That goal literally won the game, and he got kicked in the nuts and missed the rest of the game.
Was that a real photo when he lifted his jersey up and said it's called soccer on his
I'm pretty sure.
Undershirt?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm pretty
that
sure
wasn't photoshopped. That was real.
I'm pretty sure he has it. Yeah. So
that's cool.
Interesting. Josh, do you believe this is the thing? The Netherlands are in my final, and they're playing the USA next. The USA plays Netherlands next. Do you think they get past the Netherlands? Yes or no? That happens on Saturday. Do they get past the Netherlands?
We got to score some goals, man. Like, yeah. I'll say our defense has been good because I think we've gotten some shutouts. We didn't really let England. Sorry.
That's just about to offend every English person that listens.
Yeah. New England over England, right? But England, we played pretty good defense on them. I don't really know what Netherlands brings to the table offensively, but we got to get some goals, man.
Yeah. The later you get in the tournament, yeah, defense is important, but you also need to score. And I think I would have liked them to top the group because they would have faced Senegal if they would have won. And I think they match up with Senegal a little bit better. And I think Netherlands, mainly because of their defense, I mean, they have Van Dijk and they have some really good forwards. It'll just be interesting to see what happens with the U.S. I do predict, though, I'm going to predict the U.S. wins in extra time. And I'm going to say they win 2-1. I think the USA squeaks out 2 goals. Do you got a prediction for us, Josh?
I don't think they win. I mean, I think this is a realistic expectation that we had to get out of the group. So it's like a step in the right direction, but I'm going to say better luck next time. Netherlands wins this one.
And the next one is in the U.S. So that one maybe we'll give more of a thing. But anyways, that is the soccer recap. I'm sure we've talked about having Jared back on in the future. So I think there's a chance we'll have him come on maybe later in the tournament as it gets closer to the final. But hey, sports are amazing, Josh. We haven't even talked about basketball at all yet, which we will. Don't worry. I'm sure as the college football season closes,
North Carolina's been slipping up the last couple games, man.
Hey, I'll say this though, Josh. I think as the college football season closes, as many of you know, we love college football. So as it closes, we'll be able to talk more NBA, more college basketball, be able to talk about these kind of things and discuss more of it. We discuss how Ohio State women's basketball team is forcing like 35 turnovers a game, which is mind-boggling to me.
We can talk about how weird it is seeing John Shire on the Duke that is baseline weird. Instead of Mike Krzyzewski.
It's weird, man. There's a lot of weirdness going on in sports, but yeah, man, this is a good show, Josh. We talked about it and I didn't cry, so we made it.
You didn't cry. No emotional reaction. I didn't know if I was gonna have to be like the counselor kind of person on this and just.
Would you say, Josh, that you're shocked Are you shocked that I handled it so well? Do you feel like I handled it well? Like handled?
I think waiting until Wednesday probably helped. That was I would. That was your call, and well done, sir. So this isn't the emotional reaction that everybody was hoping for.
I know they were probably thinking,
yeah. I was I was soaking it all up, man. I was listening to every single Michigan Ohio State podcast I could find on Spotify, getting reactions from the game from everybody to see like
By
what
the
the
way,
temperature was from both fan
Josh was the
bases.
most annoying person when we were trying to figure this out. He's like, "Oh, here," and he just started posting things. I'm like, "Josh, you're getting annoying. I'm really just getting annoyed, Josh."
Well, I was just sharing the tweets that I thought were interesting from like people in the Ohio
The thing
State, like
is,
either fan base or beat. And I was just like trying to get like, I wasn't doing it to like stir the pot. I was just
this
sharing
is the
because I
thing.
thought, interesting,
Josh,
interesting,
uh,
interesting.
Josh doesn't post anything like with his sharing the stories. So like for me, I was just in already this heated anger of the loss, and I'm like, Josh, you're doing this to spite me, even though I know he probably wasn't. But in my head, I was like, you're spiting me
Like,
right
I think
now.
the most interesting one, the Jesse Minter one, I found an old tweet from an Ohio State fan that was talking about how Jim Knowles coached the 5th best defense in the country the year before, and Jesse Minter's defense at Vanderbilt the year before was 118th. And then I found another tweet that basically just showed all Jesse Minter's second halves this year and how it's like, yeah, you know, everybody thought that what Jim Knowles was going to be was what Jesse Minter turned out to be. And I was like, yeah, basically. I mean, Jesse Minter was the better defensive coordinator in this one. So I was like, interesting. And then all the calls for like Ryan Day to be fired and
Which is
bring in
ridiculous,
Mike
by the way.
Vrabel with a
Yeah,
blank check and
we didn't.
make
We
Brian Hartline the offensive coordinator. And I was like, that's
yeah.
interesting too.
I really will say that we didn't really get to talk about, it, but Luke Fickle becoming the Wisconsin head coach, a huge hire by Wisconsin. I think
It
a
is.
great hire.
That's
Great
leveling
hire.
up, man. I think everybody thought Jim Leonard was going to be the head coach there. I personally thought Luke Fickle was staying at Cincinnati until the Ohio State head coaching job opened. So the fact that he even left was amazing to me because he's
And
been
I
offered,
still
I
think
believe, Notre
though,
Dame. He's been offered Michigan State, turned those
yeah,
down.
I think
Wisconsin must have just either given him enough money or just to him was a much better fit.
I do believe though, if the high state job opens at some point, I do believe both him and Mike Vrabel will be the two guys that will be highly
That
sought
is
after.
underlying thing too, and why it might be risky on Wisconsin's end because it's like there's always that chance that Ryan Day maybe gets fired because he can't beat Michigan or goes to the NFL. Whatever happens, then there's always that chance that Fickle will go and get that job.
Yeah, and then you also on top of that you have also on top of that you also have Matt Rule taking the job in
Matt Rule to
Nebraska,
Nebraska, I
which is
think that's
weird.
leveling up.
A little weird though, a little
A
weird, but
little weird of a fit, but I like it for Nebraska because Matt Rule built up Temple into a competitive team. He took Baylor basically from the death penalty into a team competing for the Big 12 championship. And Nebraska's kind of in a similar spot where they've just been in turmoil. They had that season last year where they had all those one-score games. And I think Matt Rule give him a couple years so he could maybe build Nebraska back up to like an 8-4 level.
and Deion Sanders saying no to Cincinnati, but then Colorado, I guess. I don't know why that's better than the
Is he
other
going to
one, but
Colorado?
well, no, he's not going to Colorado, but he's never said like he's denying the Colorado job, but
Yeah,
he basically said no to Cincinnati, which is interesting to me.
yeah, he's been
Brian
in
Hartline
rumors.
better not go to Cincinnati. I'm just saying that
Brian
right now.
Hartline to Cincinnati is interesting. I've also heard that Texas A&M is supposed to offer him a huge amount of money to be their offensive coordinator. So Brian Hartline, I mean, that's a hot name. I think Jesse Minter this last game
I
made himself a hot
yeah.
name.
I will say about Brian Hartline though is I think that Ryan Day knows he can't lose him, and I would not be shocked if Kevin Wilson takes a head coaching job and you see Brian Hartline jump right into the offense coordinator role. I would not be
Maybe.
surprised if you just to keep basically Ryan Day saying to Kevin Wilson, "Go find yourself a head coaching job." We want Brian Hartline and to keep him here. I think because they're going to pay him. I think they'll pay him big if to keep him here. So
Maybe. Kind of wrapping up too. Lane Kiffin signs an extension with Ole Miss, and Hugh
interesting.
Freeze, who Jake Crane had been calling for since basically week 1 of the season, hire Hugh Freeze. It'll never happen because they don't have the balls to do it, but hire Hugh Freeze. And then basically every other coaching job that opened up, he's just like, who I would hire? I would hire Hugh Freeze. When the Nebraska job opened up, like Hugh Freeze has been the man, and nobody thought that a team like Auburn might be able to deal with all the negative press that would come with that. But Hugh Freeze, man, I think that's the best. As much as I love Luke Fickle too, I think this is the best hire out of all of them because he's proven he can recruit in the SEC. He's been a guy that's beaten Nick Saban back-to-back seasons. He made Liberty a competitive team. He helped coach and develop Malik Willis. I think, especially with Auburn, we've seen them compete at a national championship level with head coaches like Gus Malzahn and Gene Chizik. Like, imagine what an actual good head coach like Hugh Freeze could do with this program. I think, again, it might be a situation where you got to give him a couple years because there's absolutely no talent in that building right now. And then keeping on Cadillac Williams as an assistant head coach, I think was also clutch. So Auburn, man, give them 3 or 4 years with Hugh Freeze. I think that they could end up being the best team out of all these new coaching hires.
It's going to be crazy, a crazy ride. But Josh, what a crazy weekend we'll have coming up with college football. We'll see what happens. Next week, we'll be talking about the college football playoff. Did Ohio State make it? Did they not? Let us know your answers in the comment section below. If you've loved this episode of the podcast, go ahead and click that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. That allows us to see all the different comments. Go check out our last one with the guys. Even though the game's already over, it was still a great conversation.
Maybe listening to some stuff will be interesting now that the final results have been in, right? Like, he called it.
Or even if you want to hear about the college football playoff, go listen to our conversation with Aaron Lynn. I put it on the YouTube. It's a great conversation. His thoughts on what it will be turning out to be, what it is now. And so go check that out. And if you love us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, make sure you favorite it, share it with your friends and family. That'll be a lot. And make sure you follow us at baseline.podcast on Instagram. We hope you guys have a great weekend. We hope you guys get some rest. Have a good time. And until next time, we'll see ya.